So hello, Community Action. Thank you so much for joining this webinar on getting to know the Community Action Partnership Data Hub. I'm Mary Beth Schnaber-Remrev. I'm the Director of Organizational Capacity Building with the partnership. And so before we get started, I had a few housekeeping items for everybody. First, today's meeting is being recorded, so you will have access to this recording. It will be posted to the partnership's website later this week. Because we had so many of you register for today's session, which we are enthralled with, that means that we're going to have to keep everybody muted. Okay, so please put any questions you have in the chat. You can also use the Q&A feature. Jamie and I will be watching both throughout the session today. I'm going to be behind the scenes today, but if you have any, if you need any technical assistance or have technical questions, please feel free to reach out directly to me. Before I turn it over to my friend Jamie, just wanted to do a little bit of stage setting in case you are not familiar with the Data Hub and its purpose. So a lot of you already know that community action agencies are really meant to serve their local communities. And because of that, agencies are required to do community needs assessments or community assessments. And that assessment process often includes gathering a ton of data about our community. You know, like what's the makeup of our community? What kind of access does our community have to assets like health services or broadband or, you know, even a vehicle, right? Is there quality housing in my community? These are all questions that come up frequently for folks. So pulling all of that data together can be pretty intensive. And so that's why a number of years ago, the National Partnership began this fantastic relationship with the Center for Applied Research and Engagement Systems, which is also known as CARES at the University of Missouri Extension. And we've had this relationship for several years now to offer a one-stop shop that's meant to help you gather data about your community. And so we're really grateful for this strong relationship that we've had over the years. And we really hope that you find this tool useful. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie with the University of Missouri CARES.
Thank you so much, Mary Beth. It's really great to be with you all here today. And I saw a couple of people in the chat noting that they had a snowy day. It's also a snowy day here in central Missouri. They called for a lot more snow than we actually got. So we're grateful on both sides of that. So, but excited to be here with you all this afternoon. And we're going to take a walkthrough of the CAP Data Hub. I'm going to show you the Community Needs Assessment tool and a little bit of the map room. Hopefully you guys all were able to register if you aren't registered to use the hub before the webinar, but if you're not, we can definitely get you registered after the webinar, no problem, so you can get access. So hopefully everyone is seeing my screen. I'm gonna just be doing a live demo today. So as you are able to, or if you want to, you're welcome to follow along on your own screen if you want to click around and do some of the things I'm doing. Otherwise, you're welcome to just kind of watch and take it all in. There is a lot available here in the hub. And so I'm going to try to hit a lot of the highlights today. So the URL for the CAP Data Hub is cap.engagementnetwork.org. So you're welcome, like I said, to go to that and follow along. You will have a login link that'll access your user account and it'll get you an account. If not, you can see here we have this register for an account link, and you're welcome to click that if you don't have a login quite yet. So, but to kick us off, we have a couple of major features within the hub. So the first one is really under this Find Data tab. You'll see here that we have the Community Needs Assessment and the Housing Assessment. We also have a section called What's New. So we'll go through all three of those, and then we'll spend a little bit of time also in our map room. I like to think about our Community Needs Assessment as a really targeted tool that, as Mary Beth said, will get you a lot of the secondary data that you need in order to complete your Community Needs Assessments. or if you're writing a grant, maybe doing some program identification, evaluation type of work, the community needs assessment tool is very good for that. The map room, on the other hand, is a little bit more like a sandbox. Maybe you're trying to learn more about conditions in your community, try to explore different demographics around the geographies of your community. So it's a little less tailored, but there's a lot of data available in it. So that's kind of the exciting part. So if you are logged in, this is what your home page is going to look like. You'll be able to access both the map room and the community needs assessment. So we'll just get started by clicking under the Find Data, the Community Needs Assessment tab. It's going to take me right into the assessment tool here. And you'll see from the top, we have a 1, 2, 3-step process. And so really the work that you need to do to get this started is in these first 2 steps. And then our system really does a lot of the work on the report side of things. So in terms of setting your location, so this first step is really about where do you want to assess? And so that's a question of, do you serve one county? Do you serve multiple counties? Are you in Virginia and you serve a locality? I've learned a lot about localities in Virginia recently. So, but it's really about defining that geography. You can select more than one county to create a region. So if you serve 4 or 5 counties, you can select those 4 or 5 counties and create a region on the fly. Or if you just want to maybe assess a subset of your county, sometimes you might be writing a grant or working on a program with a fellow nonprofit, and they might serve a smaller region than you do. So you just want to pull data for that. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And how we would go about doing that county level selection would be to first start by clicking on a state. So what state and what counties do you want to assess? So for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to go ahead and pick Florida. It seems like probably a warm place to be right now. And you'll see here that when I do click Florida, each of the counties available in Florida will show up here. So I could click Bay County and Broward County, and you can see how when I click on any of these county names, it's going to show up over here on the right-hand side in my assessment location. If I make an incorrect selection, you'll notice as I hover over each of these, this little X turns red, and I can take any of those away like I said, if I made a mistake there. So I'm going to start with just 2 counties and create an assessment, and then we're going to come back and spend a little bit of time exploring these other options, because I think most of you probably work at the county level and do many of your assessments at the county level. But there are some functionalities in here that allow you to assess at a sub-county level as well. So if you wanted to look at a series of zip codes, census tracts, school districts, that's all available as well. We're going to just do a little bit of a straightforward demo to start, though. So I've got my 2 counties selected here. You can see that if I go back, I can click change state, and I could select another state. So if I wanted to, for example, also pick counties in Georgia, maybe I've got something that's cross-cutting across state, I could do that as well. So just kind of point that out. The next step after you've selected your location, so here I've got the 2 counties in Florida that I want to look at. I can click this data indicators button here at the bottom of the screen, and it's going to take you into the indicator selection. So these indicators are not by any means the full available set of data that exists out in the universe. What we've done here is over the years, and it's going on, I think, about 10 years that we've had a hub like this available for a national community action partnership, is we've really started to narrow in and hone in on what are those key indicators, what are those key pieces of data that you're going to need to build a really solid community needs assessment, right? And that's what you're going to find here. So there's obviously a lot of really strong demographic data in here. So things that are going to tell you about your population, how has it changed, what is the makeup of it in terms of race, age, gender, and ethnicity. When it comes to veterans populations and citizenship status, you can see all of that reflected here in this very first category. As we scroll down, you'll notice that if you click these little carrots here on the right-hand side of these category names, it'll open it up, and that's where you can start to see where those nested indicators are. We get into income, and obviously income is a very important set of indicators for you all to be able to define need in your community and identify different types of vulnerable populations. So you can see here that we have a lot of data related to income, households in poverty, different types of assistance programs, and then also we have some child poverty rates as well. We also have both 100 and 200% recognizing, and there's 185, recognizing that these are all sort of important in different ways. And it also depends on what you're reporting, or maybe what the grant application that you're working on, or a program that you're working on, really what those thresholds are going to be. So we've made all of those available for you as well. As we continue down, you can see things like employment, education, so looking at different types of educational attainment, also thinking about those youngest populations, so preschool enrollment, Head Start enrollment. As we get into housing, you can see here that we have not only what's available in terms of housing, but then how much does it cost, who's living in those types of houses. So that information is there as well. The list just continues with some other social and economic factors related to the food environment. Broadband access has really become very important for a variety of reasons to support healthcare, education, workforce development. So that's a newer indicator that's been added over the years. Things like crime are also available. And then we do get into some healthcare access and health behaviors, a few health outcomes, including some mortality data, life expectancy, and some other mental health types of indicators. And then there is still a special topics around COVID. So that's kind of an overview of the indicators that are available within the community needs assessment tool. As I mentioned earlier, if you are looking for something that you don't see here within the community needs assessment, you'll probably be able to find it in our map room. I'll show you how to find that here in just a little bit. But just to note, this isn't the full universe. It's really just a very targeted list. The other thing that I wanted to point out is you'll notice as I hover over any of these indicators, this little I button next to it illuminates. And if you click that I button, what's going to happen is you're going to get a nice little pop-up. And this pop-up is going to give you some additional information. It tells you a few of the attributes. So here we can see that we have total and percent of total that's going to be reported. It's also looking at just those veterans over the age of 18, which makes a lot of sense. There's also some supplemental data available. So we can see that this is also broken out by gender and age. And then finally, we do get a link back to the original source and the release date. So many people are asking, because it became available at the very end of last year. The new American Community Survey data are being incorporated right now. Our target date for that is like the second week in February. We should have it all available in these reports, in the assessment tool and within the map room. So give us just another couple weeks and you should see that new data reflected here in the needs assessment tool. But I like these little pop-ups because they do give you a better idea of what additional data might be available in addition to, right, just that main indicator, thinking about the number of veterans in a population there. So in order to select these indicators, again, we're thinking about what do we want to assess, where do we want to assess? So we picked our location. What is it that we want to learn about that location? We can select individual indicators here. So if I wanted to just get a subset of these, I could do that by clicking the checkbox next to that indicator name. If I wanted to get an entire category, I can select the checkbox next to the category name. You can see here it selects all of those for you. And if you just want to go ahead and get the whole thing, we do have a button here at the top that says select all indicators, and it will give you all indicators. So everything that's available here in this report will populate. So we'll do that just for demonstration purposes. And in order to move to the next step, then we've selected our location, we've selected our indicators. Now we're going to go to reports. I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom of the screen. You'll see that there's a button here. We could go back, but we're ready to move forward. So as I said, our system really does the work in step 3, and you'll see it doing the work. So this nice little menu appears and it shows you all of the indicators that you've selected, and it kind of shows you that loading status, right? So we're able to see all of those things load for the report. Now you can close this menu very easily. You can see this little blue button here at the bottom. I can click it and it closes the menu. I can open it back up and I can see again that progress. This is also nice because these reports are just a long scroll. So if you want to jump between indicators, it's very easy to click on an indicator name and just kind of jump right down to it. So I really like that. A couple of things to note as the report is loading. You'll also see the status of the loading up here in this download as. You'll see this little blue bar is kind of moving along as the indicators are loading. So that's also, if you're wondering how long it's going to take or kind of where it's at in the process, you can see it there as well. At the top, you're going to be reminded of the location that you selected. So here we can see that we've selected Bay County and Broward County. So that is correct. And then we really dive into our actual indicators here. So we'll see this very first one is total population. We have a nice description up here that tells you a little bit about the indicator in context of the geography that you've selected. So you'll see here that, for example, in the area that I've selected, we have about 1,082 persons per square mile. It tells me that in text. I can also then see that same information in the data table below. So this is really helpful depending on if you're a reader or a data table user. There's a couple of different ways to get the same information. Moving on from the description, we do have a data table, and this is really the meat of the indicator here. This first row that we have is going to be your report location. So what's important to note here is that I've selected 2 counties. So my report location is the aggregate. So we're going to add up Bay County and Broward County into one, and that is going to be my report location. So you'll see here that I get the total population for those 2 counties combined, population density. And then I do get information for each of the counties that I've selected as well. I'll talk a little bit more about why it's important to see those individual county numbers, but for now you can see that we do get the aggregate, the individual, and then we also get 2 additional important data points: the state benchmark and the national benchmark. These are very helpful as you're thinking about maybe communicating some of this information back to your community or other stakeholders. Oftentimes we find that folks are not always aware of what's good or bad when you're talking about data. And so having those benchmarks to be able to say, we're doing better than the state of Florida, or we're doing worse than the national average, gives people a quick way to kind of understand how severe the problem is or how well they're doing in a specific area. And so those benchmarks are also very helpful. Under each data table, you'll also find that same source information and a link back to the source. So here we can see this comes to us from the American Community Survey. It is from the 2016 to 2020 release. And then I can get more details. If I click that show more details, it's going to give me a little bit about the data background, some methodology information, notes and data limitations. If we've done any additional calculations, it'll also be noted here in this pop-up as well. In addition to the data table, we also have maps available. So you'll be able to get a quick view. Here you can see that I've picked 2 counties sort of very separate from each other. Bay County is up here on the western part of Florida's Panhandle. And then we've got Broward County, which is in the southern part of the peninsula. But those are highlighted so you can get a view of where they are. And then we also get that same population density information here. This is also reported by county, but oftentimes you'll see that the maps will report the smallest geography that we have available. So sometimes you'll see that the data table is reporting county level information, but you're actually looking at tract level information within the map. So that's just something to note. Anytime that we can make data available by race, age, gender, or ethnicity, we absolutely want to do that, recognizing that equity is a core part of what we do and how we work and how we should be taking on new work and addressing problems in our community. So you'll see some of these breakout tables will include that additional demographic information. They have the same structure where we have a nice little introductory sentence, data table, and then we do have some additional data visualizations here. All of our data visualizations are interactive in the sense that you can hover over them and get values. Sometimes you can, I'll show you some of our other ones, you can kind of modify the way that they look as well. So you'll see here that this is looking at gender to start, age groups, and then as we go down, we'll also get race and ethnicity. Just to kind of make a note about especially the race and ethnicity categories and the gender categories, we are limited to what the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, kind of defines as gender and race. And these are the categories you can see here that they use for race. So we have white, Black, Asian, Native American, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, some other race, and multiple races. We recognize that this is limiting and it does not encompass all race and ethnicities that make up our communities. However, we're kind of beholden to what the data sources provide, and many of the federal data sources do follow those OMB guidelines. They do also use binary gender to report gender as well, so we are constrained by that as well. Continuing on, I'm going to find a little bit different indicator to be able to look at. I know that poverty is something that you guys spend a lot of time thinking about and looking at. And so here you can see one of the best indicators for knowing, you know, the quality of community and the likelihood of health and wealth within a community lies in our children and the childhood poverty rate. So things like children eligible for free and reduced price lunch can be a good bellwether to kind of see how things are going. So again, within the indicator, we have the name, and then we also have a nice description here. You'll notice that we do have some notes around suppressed data and no data. I'll talk a little bit about that. But here you can see, for example, we have within our data table, again, that report location. So we can see for those two counties that I've selected that about 51% of the children are eligible within those two counties for free and reduced price lunch. Now, this is really where those individual county level numbers become very handy and useful for you all. What we can see here is that Bay County, Florida has a free and reduced price lunch rate of 42%, whereas Broward County has 52.5%. So we know that there are more children living in poverty in Broward County than there is in Bay County. When we think about program development, you know, how we're going to allocate resources, where we're going to spend our time, money, effort, these types of breakouts, I think, are really helpful. Not that we want to discount Bay County by any means, but Broward County is clearly showing that they have a greater need. They have a larger population that does qualify for free and reduced price lunch. Therefore, if we had limited resources, time and money, right, we might want to spend a little bit more effort there in Broward County. We could probably make a bigger impact. As mentioned before, those benchmarks for the state and for the United States are also helpful. If I, you know, just kind of walked up to somebody on the street and said Broward County, Florida has a 52% free and reduced price lunch rate, the average person might not know if that's high or low or good or bad, right? And so having those benchmarks available lets you know kind of how far from the national average or the state average, how far from kind of the norm, I guess you would say, or status quo, are we, or is my county? And so you can see here that Actually, Broward is doing well in comparison, right, to the state of Florida and to the rest of the United States. Bay County is well below that. So it seems like they've got some programs or some sort of mechanisms in place to kind of keep that number lower. You can also see the same type of information reported in a dial. So anytime we can make that value statement where we can say you're doing better than or worse than those state and national averages, you'll see this dial over here on the right-hand side. The green is that aggregate report location of the 2 counties that we've selected. Then we get the state of Florida and the rest of the United States. As I mentioned, you can click these on and off, so these are all interactive. So if I only wanted to look at my report location in comparison to the state of Florida, I can turn off the United States. I can turn it right back on as well. So those are some nice little tips there. This also has a link back to the original source. It tells us the release date, 2020 to 2021, and we can get more details. This is also a great example of an indicator where you'll see that we're reporting county level information here in the data table, but we are reporting free and reduced price lunch rates in the map as by school. So you can see here the dots on the map are individual schools across the state of Florida, and we can start to see sort of where maybe those hot spots of higher rates of free and reduced price lunch are located. I will tell you that if you click this view larger map button here at the bottom, it will open this layer in the map room. And like I said here, we'll switch over to the map room here in just 1 second. But you'll see that it does give you a nice bigger view because those maps in the report are kind of small. And if you have a hard time seeing it all, being able to view it here in the larger map room is going to be really helpful. In addition to the race and gender and demographic breakout information that we try to provide when and where available, we also try to provide trends over time when available. So as I mentioned with the demographic breakouts, not all data provide those demographic breakouts, and unfortunately not all data provide trend information either, or collect data consistently over time without changing their methodology, those types of things for us to be able to report trends. But when and where we can, you'll see trends, right? So we'll also see that available here in this data table. We can kind of see, for example, that Bay County started a little bit higher, back in the early 2012, 2013, they were up in the 50s, getting closer to 60, and then they started to go back down. We can see that then also reflected here in this line chart. As we follow it, you can see those numbers hover, the values change with the hover. And I love these types of charts because it makes me ask questions, right? It makes me ask questions. What happened in Bay County between 2014 and 2016? Was it a program that was put in place? Was there some sort of financial support given to families or children in that area? Was there some sort of policy or administration change during that time that could have made a difference? And those are great questions to ask, especially because, Bay County, Florida looks like they're doing something right. Their numbers have been going down. So what is that? What are they doing? How are they making that impact? Sometimes you'll see those numbers go up and you're asking the same questions. What changed? What went away? Was there a program that got unfunded or that stopped because a community champion left? Those kinds of things. And these data kind of help you suss some of that out. As with the dials, these are also interactive. So if I wanted to just look at Bay County compared to Florida, I can click the name of the other geographies and turn those off and get a nicer, cleaner trend line here. So you'll see that that's sort of the flow, right, of the community needs assessment. All of our indicators have that same introduction, data table, map, and then if there is additional information, it's made available as well. A couple of things now that we our full report has loaded. Again, I'll show you this menu that you can scroll up and down, and you're able to jump between indicators very easily, because this list is can get a little bit long when you do select all indicators. So that is available to make navigation a little bit easier. We also have some options up here at the top. So first and foremost, we have this download as, and this won't show up and be clickable until all of your indicators have loaded. So you saw before it was kind of grayed out, and we saw that bar where it was progressing. You can't download the report or save it until it's complete. So just kind of know that, you know, sometimes depending on your internet connection, it may take shorter amounts of time or longer amounts of time. But you'll notice that we have 3 options here. You can choose it as a PDF, which is going to get you exactly what you see here on the screen as a static version. We also have it available as an Excel output. So if you wanted to take some of these data, put it into your own charts, create your own Excel table, or do some additional analysis, pull it into Tableau or Power BI, some other visualization software, the Excel export makes it easy to do that. And then we also have this Microsoft Word option. And the Microsoft Word option was actually born from Community Action. We heard from people early on that, hey, this is really great, but I can't modify a PDF. I can't add my stakeholder interviews, my local survey results, pictures, videos, additional context about my community in that PDF, right? So we made it available to where you can pull all of the same information, the data tables, the dials, the maps over into a Word document, and then you have the ability to do some additional editing. You can add all that additional context, add in your other data, and really build your full CNA around the secondary data. So that's available to you. We have a couple of report options. So if you want to make it smaller, you can not show county data, not show those state benchmarks. You can remove the supplemental data, which is going to be the breakouts and trends over time. You can remove the maps, which is a good idea if you're going to print this in black and white. Black and white maps aren't very exciting. Another option that we have here are, you can see those indicators that are just better than state average, or just those that are worse than state average. So this is what we would call maybe like a green dial report, where you see all the dials are green. This would be a red dial report, where we see that all of our dials are red, and it'll reload your report here with just those indicators where we see red dials. And these are helpful. These 2 options are helpful if you are engaging in any sort of community prioritization process, to be able to look at, where are we doing well? Where are we not doing so well? What are some of the things that we want to prioritize in the categories where we're not doing so well? And it makes it a little bit less overwhelming for folks to look at. So that option is there for you as well. We also have a quick facts report, which is just a series of data tables, and then also a source and methodology appendix. So we very much encourage you to cite not only the hub, but the actual original source of these data. And so we've tried to make that easy for you by creating a source and methodology document that you can just pull over as you're also downloading your report. You can share these with others via a link or social media. You can print, and then you can also save them. So those are just some additional options that you have there. I promised, though, to go back and show you a little bit of the advanced location selection. And so I can go back just by clicking that location number 1 here at the top. I'm going to get rid of the counties that I've selected, and I could do an assessment for an entire state. So if you wanted to just get those state level numbers, or you're trying to get an idea of sort of what it looks like across your whole state, you can just select one state, and it'll pull information for the state, and you can show all counties there in that show as menu. and get all of that information. We do have a special use case here around Cook County. So if you're in Cook County, you probably know what that is. And if you don't, let me know, I can help you out. But then we have these two other options, and I really try to use the pick from map more than draw my area. Draw my area is a little bit more free form. Sometimes it's a little harder to do, but here in the pick from map, this is a really great tool because it allows you, like I said, to get down to sub-county levels. And so the reason that that's important is because oftentimes county level information will mask what's going on at a sub-county level, right? So we might be able to look at something like, maternal mortality at a county level. The numbers look great, right? Because we're spreading it across that whole county. We're taking the whole county into account. But there's actually maybe one or more areas within that county where maternal mortality is really high, and it might be something that needs to be addressed. We can't tell that from the county level data because it kind of masks it sometimes. And so using this tool, we can type in a location. So here, I know that there were like some tornadoes and things like that in Houston yesterday. So it's kind of a good example to be able to say, what's going on in Houston, where are maybe the most vulnerable populations if we're thinking about responding to, a disaster or some sort of event, and we can start to build a custom area. So we know that not all of Houston, not all of Harris County was affected. So up here on the left, there's this select geographic type. I can go down and I can select zip code, census tract, school district. So for this example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select zip code. And you'll see now that I've got all of these lines that show up. And these are zip code boundaries. These are all the zip codes within the Houston, Harris County area. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select a series of zip codes, right? So this is how you can go about sort of creating an area that is sub-county. We're not looking at the whole county. We're looking at just a series here of additional zip codes, excuse me. You can see them reflected over here in this list on the left-hand side. I could pick really as many as I want to, but just trying to get a general area around, the south part of Houston. And then we can start to look at some of those additional indicators. Excuse me. So now that I have my geography selected, that sub-county geography, we'll see that it's highlighted, so I can know that, yes, this is the area that I want to look at. I can move to my next step to select data indicators. I'm actually not going to select all indicators for this. I want to just look at a couple of, I think, what are going to be important to know about this area after a disaster. So we could look at things like seniors in poverty. We have youth that are not working and not in school. We have some severe cost burden households, single parent households, older adults living alone, some homeless children and youth. So these are all populations that may or may not need support after an event like a tornado. So now I can go in and I can create my report, just like I did with the counties. You'll see here that now I've got a much more targeted report. We're not looking at that full suite. We're looking at just a subset of those. And what's going to happen is the system is going to aggregate then data for these zip codes that I've selected. So rather than looking at county level data, we get the report location here. So we can see that we have about an 8.9% of seniors poverty rate. So it is better than those state and national averages. So that's why we see it in green. But we can see here that, for example, I've touched 3 different counties with the area that I've selected: Harris, Galveston, and Brazoria. Hopefully I said that right. But we can see again that Harris and Galveston have much higher rates of poverty among seniors. Those would be areas of interest. We can see how that plays out here on the map as well. I want to jump down to older adults living alone. Again, this might be a population that needs more attention after something like a a disaster that affects houses and other types of residential communities. You can see here we have about 32% of the total population are older adults living alone. That number is much higher in Galveston than it is in the other 2 counties. So again, that might be where we want to spend some of our time. We can see that represented here in the map, and I'm actually going to open this up so you guys can see it a little bit better. And this is where we can really start to dive in, like I said, to some of that sub-county level data. So I'll give this a second to load. But we can go down and continue to look at things like homelessness among children, youth not working and not in school. So those might also be more transient populations. You can see how that's reported as well. So that's all available here within the report. Just like before, I can go back to the top and I can download this as a PDF, Excel table, Microsoft Word. I can turn things on and off, share, print, and save. So that's really the big overview of the community needs assessment tool. If there are questions or you have any questions about location selection or the data indicators, feel free to put those in the chat. Happy to answer those here as we get towards the end. But I did want to take some time to spend a little bit, like I said, in the map room. So you can come directly into the map room from the community needs assessment, just like we did here. And we're going to have that nice outline of the area that we're assessing. So all of those zip codes that we're looking at here. We are looking at data by tract, by census tract though. So that's why you're seeing some of these areas that don't necessarily line up, right, with the zip codes that we've selected. Census tracts typically are, especially in urban areas, smaller than a zip code. So we are getting down more to that neighborhood level. Here, since the layer has already loaded, I can see the layer in the legend here on the right-hand side. So we are looking at households with seniors age 65 and over living alone. This does come to us from the ACS, from those 5-year estimates. In the dark green areas, that's where we're going to see those populations where we've got higher rates of adults living alone. So we can click on the map on those dark green areas and get some more information about how many of those folks are there, what's the total percentage. It's thinking, there we go. So here I've clicked in Galveston. I can see the census tract number, which isn't very exciting, but it's there. I can see that it's around 14% of folks there, around 315 seniors living alone. I can click on any area and get that same information. And it just really helps us determine, kind of what is the magnitude potentially of the problem or the population in need. Down here, we're looking at more like 16%, which is pretty high. So it does give you that flexibility to be able to poke around and see conditions around the community. I do want to enter the map room though, just from the start. So this is kind of just one way to enter the map room, like I said, from the assessment tool. But we can also just go to Map My Community, and this drop down will bring you straight into the map room. And this is often where you'll land. And so what you can see here is that there are 2 options down here: browse by topic and browse by source. We have a taxonomy that we've tried to organize all of the data that are available to map. So you can see that as you click through these little carrots, it brings you through to subtopics and then down to the actual individual data layers that you can add to the map itself. So much like in the report, clicking the checkbox next to the data layer name, the indicator name, will add it to your map. It makes it part of your selection. So that's one way to kind of go about seeing what data we have available. We also have this browse by source option. So if you are curious, like, where's CARES getting all these data? Well, we're not making them, right? We're pulling them from a lot of federal and state level agencies. So you'll see those listed here. There's a lot of, there should be a lot of familiar names like the American Community Survey. Bureau of Labor Statistics is where we get unemployment data. We've got lots of other census data. As I scroll down here, you'll see that we get into things like the EPA, FBI for crime reports. We've got some FCC data around broadband, and really the list goes on and on. So if you are familiar or want to get familiar with where we're getting our data and where these data are coming from, this source list is really helpful. I should back up a little bit and tell you that we have I think we're about 30,000 data layers available here within the map room, and those come from about 125 different sources. So kind of give you an idea of the breadth and depth of what's available to map in here. Most people are just going to start out searching by keyword. So if we type in a word like poverty here, I will say that you want to search by keyword, so one word or a short phrase. We are not quite as sophisticated as Google, so don't type in how many people live in poverty in Harris County, Texas. You won't get any results, unfortunately, but that's why we want you to stick to just kind of one word again or a short phrase. I can type in poverty though, and I get about 380 results you'll see here. And that's because poverty is one of those indicators that's available historically. So, right, we can look back in time, we can see previous years. It's available at different poverty levels, 50, 100, 200, 125, 185. Those are all in here. We have them by age, race, gender, and ethnicity. So all of those breakouts are available in here as well. So it just kind of gives you an idea of all of the different poverty information. We have a couple of different sources. So we have small area estimates that do poverty estimates, the SAPI data, and then also the ACS. So a couple of different ways to look at it there. But without further ado, I'm going to click this checkbox so we can see what it looks like when I add it to the map. So if I click the checkbox next to the layer that I'm looking at, I can click this add to map button here at the bottom. And you'll see that it's loading and it should add it to the map here pretty quickly. We're always going to be zoomed out to that full United States, but you can zoom in a couple of ways. We can use these plus and minus buttons over here on the left-hand side. So if we wanted to zoom into an area, we could. If you want to make it back to the full United States, you can click this little home button here. It'll bring you right back. Or up here at the top, we also have this enter a location bar. So for example, I could type in, Mary Beth was talking about South Dakota, so I could type in South Dakota, and you'll see that the map sort of recenters then on that state, and I can see the state and the county boundaries there, and the data, the population below poverty percent by county across the state of South Dakota. A couple of other things to note is once you have your layer loaded, you've picked your geography of where you're looking at, there are some additional options. So again, we're going to turn our attention back to the right side in this legend here. I could add labels. So maybe I don't want to click on the map and see kind of individually what counties are, what percentages. So I can turn on the label. So now we can see that there's some counties in southern South Dakota that have pretty high rates. One is all the way up to 58, almost 59%, 42, 47, versus some of our northern counties where we've got lower single digits, 9.4, 5.7. So that kind of gives you a nice idea of sort of what you're looking at to turn on those labels. Many of our layers are also available at multiple geographies, like I had mentioned previously. So you'll see a layer like this is available at county, place, which is kind of cities and towns, tract, congressional districts, state, house, and senate districts, school districts. Anytime you see ZICTA or ZCTA, that is going to be zip code level data. So the Z means zip. And then PUMAs are public use micro areas, and they aren't used very often. The reason that I like pointing this out, though, is if you're ever doing any sort of advocacy work, if you bring a map of a legislature's district by, poverty, by their state or House district or Senate district, and you tell them, there are this many children or people living in poverty in your district, it's going to be a lot more impactful than just saying this is the state level number or these are the county level numbers. It is always a better idea to kind of get that specific geography and provide that information in that way. It's much more impactful. But you can see here that I can switch between those geographies pretty quickly. The map does take a minute though to kind of reload as I change those geographies. And again, depending on your internet connection, it may go quick or it may go slow. So just kind of be patient sometimes on that. But just like I did before, I can click on any part of the map and get more information. You can see here that we're looking at, around 8.6% of folks living in poverty in this one little census tract that I selected here. I could look at total instead of percent. So that is the other option that we have here, is not just looking at this in a different geography lens, but then also looking at it in a different data type. So these are raw numbers of greater than 2,000, under 500, those kinds of things. And so that's available to you as well. In addition to seeing your layer that you've selected here in the legend, there's also this little menu icon up here that I want to point out. It's small, it's kind of hidden, but I think it's important because it provides you with reference layers. Again, if you're talking to people out in the public or folks that maybe aren't as aware of the data or the geography that you're talking about, adding things like county names. So we have preloaded reference layers here. We can see things like county boundaries. We can also see highways. So if you wanted to add highways, you could add highways. And sometimes that helps orient people like, oh, okay, there's, I-90. That makes a lot of sense to where, we are located. Those the county names are always helpful too for people to kind of orient where they are. So those reference layers can be really helpful. We also have, in addition to the reference layers, on the left-hand side, so on the other side of the map room, there's this little square of squares. You can switch your base map as well. So if you wanted to see, for example, streets below your data layer, you could do that rather than just seeing sort of the gray base map that we make available. So those are a couple of highlights in terms of using the legend and modifying the geographies and the data types. You can add additional data, so we don't limit you to just one data layer. So for example, if I wanted to add food deserts, I could type in food deserts and I get about 46 results. I think the layer that I want to look at is here on the second page. So we can look at food desert census tract change. So how has it changed between 2015 and 2019? You can see that it added that to my legend here on the right-hand side. And one thing to note is that sometimes you'll need to reorder your layers, right? So just like we stack pancakes on top of one another, that's kind of how layers in the map room work. So I actually want to pull this food desert layer by dragging and dropping it up to the top. So it's over that poverty layer that we're looking at. And now what we're able to see is that we've got some areas that were new food deserts that have been food deserts for a long time, food deserts that have gone away in different areas, and we can start to tell a story, right, about poverty and food access and children and those types of things as we add more and more data to our map. We do have some advanced mapping tools as well. So that add data button is here. We also have tools, so you can query the data. You can select data. So if you wanted to just grab some data in a table, you could do that from the map as well. We have measurement tools. Draw graphics, I think, is really fun. This is something new that we've added to where you can say, okay, I really want you to pay attention to this area right here. So I can put an arrow on the map, on my map. So that's nice. I can also mask areas. So if I'm we just want to look at South Dakota, we don't want to look at any of the states around it. Or if we want to just look at a specific county, we could do that as well. The transparency there is modifiable, so you can kind of zoom in and really focus people in using that mask tool. And then there's some others, including swipe layers and walk scores. So just like within the community needs assessment, you can also save and share these maps. So you can share them via a link. And the nice thing about sharing them is that folks will end up in the map room, and they're able to kind of move around, add layers, change geographies without changing, losing the integrity of your original map. They're kind of starting a new map session, but it's with the layers that you've loaded. So that link is nice because it's interactive. You can share it via social media or email. You can also export these maps either as a PNG or a PDF document. I think the PNG is really nice because it allows you to drop it into a PowerPoint presentation, an infographic, it's just like an image file you can basically put anywhere you want. So I also like to say that maps are really good conversation starters. They kind of root people in data and kind of make a level playing field for everyone to start a conversation from the same place about community or about an issue in a community, right? So that's always helpful. So those are some of the map features that we have here. So I know that was a bit of a whirlwind, but there's a lot that you can do here in the map room. So if you do have any questions, always feel free to reach out to our team. We're happy to walk you through any of these advanced mapping tools, or if you're having trouble finding a layer, we can help you find those things. A couple of things to note, though, as I mentioned, we are also working to pull in all of that new ACS data. So mid-February is when we'll have that available. One other thing we've had a lot of requests around is broadband, because not only is there a lot of money coming down from the federal government and from state governments, but it's something that people need access to, right? To get telehealth, to get education, to do your homework, to find jobs. And so having good data around what broadband are available in a given area. So if you do type in the word broadband or internet, we do have a lot of data from the last 5 years or so from the FCC around broadband availability. The ACS also provides some data that's self-reported, and it's always fun to kind of see what the FCC provides versus what people are saying. They don't match up. So it's important to kind of look at both sides of that coin. We also have some data from Microsoft. So just kind of note that is available in there in case that's an issue that you're working on or that you'd be interested in tackling. So with that, we have a few minutes left, and I'm going to pause and look at the chat and see what questions I can.
So Jamie, how about if I throw a couple at you? So one of the first questions we got is there a data release schedule so we can see when or how often each indicator is updated, or does it go by release schedule of the primary source?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I meant to show you guys this what's new feature. So under the Find Data tab from the homepage, there's what's new there. And this will give you an idea of what we've updated. So you can see here, we do data updates or new data, and that's noted. You can tell whether it's in the map room or if it says maps and data. So then we've updated things both in the map room and within the report. So this is sort of what we're doing, and you can see the dates on that of, how often things are getting updated and, what's available. In terms of sort of what's coming, we don't really have a schedule of what's coming all of the time because we are beholden by the sources themselves, right? So something like the ACS last year was released months late. We had nothing to do with that. We kind of just had to wait and see when they released the data. Same goes for many of the other sources. They don't always have like a specific date that they're going to release things. We just kind of have to watch and wait, and then we will publish it here though within this news feed.
There was also a question are there built-in Boolean type operations? For example, can we see a single aggregate report of 3 cities together? Or another example would be like removing a county or a city. So could you look at county data, but subtracting a major city from the county data?
Yeah, I think the best way to go about that, as I was showing with the pick from map location, would be to use this tool to exclude, right? You would pick either all of the cities that you wanted to include or all of the zip codes that you wanted to include within a county. And then you could choose what you wanted to exclude. We don't really have a way to say you want to get, X county, but exclude one, specific area. It'd have to kind of be the inverse, right? Where you're picking all the things that you want and leaving those out that you don't want.
And you might have answered this. Is county subdivision available as a geographic level in that map room?
So we have many sub-county geographies. So there's like census tract, zip codes. So mostly, yes. I guess I'm trying to, if there is a specific sub-county geography that you guys are looking for, let me know. But yes, we've got many available.
Great. And a common question folks are having is just, what if I'm having trouble getting registered, or I have questions about the map room, or I need help navigating this? Who do I contact?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on the support page, there are a couple of PDF documents that walk you through step by step exactly what I showed you guys today, how to get through the needs assessment, how to make a map. And then down here, right below that, it says still stuck. You can email me at kleinsorgej@missouri.edu. My project assistant, Jordan, has also probably been in communication with some folks. She's been doing the registrations. And I can also, I'll add her email down here as well. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of us.
Well, we are actually at time. And so as I know that hour went really quick, want to say thank you to Jamie for such an in-depth review of this awesome tool. Again, we're so grateful for our partnership with the University of Missouri Cares. So thank you to all of you who joined us. If you have further questions, feel free to reach out to Jamie, reach out to me. We are here to help. I put an evaluation link in the chat. Really important that we hear from you. And so we do listen to those evaluations. We take them into consideration as we plan our future webinars. And so with that, look for the recording later this week and reach out if you need anything. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.